Good morning. My name is Jeff Allen. I'm Executive Director of Fourth, and I'd like to welcome everyone to this virtual 2020 Roadmap panel. As you know, normally we would be welcoming you all to Portland, Oregon right about now to the Roadmap Conference. And this year we were very much looking forward to having you all here in conjunction with the Global EVS Conference and meeting a couple thousand new friends from around the world. Unfortunately, that's obviously not possible, but we're glad that you could join us for this panel. I should mention that we will be sending out a summary, resources, and a complete recording, including all of the slides from all of these sessions after this week's webinars conclude on Friday. So if you missed something, or if you have a problem, or if you want to share this with friends and colleagues, you will be able to do that, and you'll get that email after the end of the week. I do hope, too, that we will see many of you here in Portland next June in 2021 for Roadmap once again. Those dates are already set. It is not too early to mark your calendar for June 29th and 30th of next year. In fact, you can even register right now and take advantage of some extremely early bird pricing on your registration. So if you like what you see this week, please plan to join us. And if you're interested in sponsoring the roadmap, those sponsorships are also discounted through the end of the year. So please take advantage of that. You can learn more at roadmapfourth.org, which is the conference site. I also would be remiss if I didn't mention that members of Fourth receive additional discounts on both registration and sponsorship. And if you are not yet a member of Fourth, this would be a great time to become one. You can learn more about our work and about membership at fourthmobility.org or follow up with us after the webinar. So I think we also have to take a moment to acknowledge this is a remarkable time. Not just are we facing a pandemic of COVID that has disrupted our lives, but we are confronting the pandemic of racism in this country that has done more than disrupt lives. It has ended lives across the country. And we were reminded recently of that in more shocking fashion. And I think that we all need to be reflecting. I know we at Fourth are reflecting on the need to double down on our work to center equity as a core value in our work and in our lives. And I am sure that our speakers today are going to touch on both how outreach and engagement with people around clean electric mobility has changed due to COVID, but also on how we can redouble our efforts to make sure that these technologies reach these communities and benefit the folks who have been penalized by so many of our transportation decisions and investments over many decades. Before we get into the actual content of the webinar, one of the other things we always look forward to doing at our Roadmap conference is presenting our Roadmap Awards. And again, we weren't able to do that in person this year, so we are spreading those out among these webinars as well. And today, it gives me a lot of pleasure to present the Public Sector Leadership Award. And the Public Sector Leadership Award is presented to an individual or an organization exemplifying public sector leadership in smart transportation. And our judges, our board of directors, were pretty much unanimous this year that the award should go to the Norwegian Electric Vehicle Association, and I will attempt to pronounce this correctly, Norsk Elbilforening. I'm sure I'm going to get corrected on that. The Norwegian Electric Vehicle Association is the world's largest EV driver association with over 75,000 members, and their tireless and innovative advocacy over the last 20 years has done wonders to promote electric vehicles and has helped make Norway a historic leader in transportation electrification, with now over half its passenger car market driving fully electric. And I'm really thrilled that we have our old friend and colleague, and repeat visitor, I think, to our Roadmap conference, Christina Boo, here to accept the award. Christina, you want to tell me how it's pronounced properly and say a few words?
Thank you very much. First, I want to say thank you for this award. You already shipped it to us. We are extremely thankful and honored, and I would like to express my gratitude on behalf of our more than 75,000 members and our 37 employees and volunteers all over the country. This is really great, and we feel that Fourth is a bit of a distant sibling across the Atlantic. It's very nice to have someone that are, powerful in other areas of the world as well. We were a bit alone for many years. We're 25 years of age this year. It's pronounced Norsk Elbilforening. And elbil in Norwegian means electric vehicle, or electric car, actually. So it's translated to Norwegian EV Association. Yeah, so we are extremely happy. We are first and foremost a Norwegian NGO working here in Norway to promote electric cars and lobby and help our members, obviously. But we, of course, also have, during the years, been active internationally because we suddenly got more and more questions and interest from around the world, and we have been very happy to contribute and to share our knowledge and enthusiasm, and we're so happy now that more and more of the same enthusiasm is now flourishing around the world. It's really, for me that has been working with electric mobility for about 10 years, it's really great to see this happening.
Thank you so much. And since you didn't give it a shout out, I will say, if you attend one conference other than Roadmap, it should be the Nordic EV Summit. And we're looking forward to that being back up and running and something that we can look forward to coming over for. So thank you for all your great work, Christina, and hope to see you here or there soon in person.
Thank you very much. Likewise.
So with that, let's dig right into the content of today's discussion. And one of the things that they have done so well in Norway, and thanks to the work of Christina and her team, is making sure that people realize that there is such a thing as an electric vehicle and that it's a great alternative for folks. So we're going to hear a little bit more about how they've done that and also some great US examples. And I'm thrilled to hand it over to our moderator, Fourth's very own Sergio López. Take it away, Sergio.
Thank you, Jeff. And thank you, everyone. To give a shout out to our team behind the scenes. That's Crystal, Ashley, and Symbiote for making this virtual conference happen. Very exciting, and I'm still getting used to talking to the computer screen. So, yeah. So, yeah, my name is Sergio López. I'm a program manager here at Fourth. I've been involved with the consumer engagement work here for a little now 3.5 years, almost reaching 4. And a lot has changed in the last 3.5, 4 years, and on many values and on many layers of this world, as Jeff has mentioned. And I think electric vehicles and electric transportation adoption is crucial to how things move forward. So education, outreach, and consumer engagement are essential to EV adoption. As we all know, many auto buyers may be unaware of electric vehicles or have limited information on them. So it's crucial that we lead innovative programs and campaigns that increase awareness of electric vehicles and the benefit of driving them. This includes the promotion of rebates and tax credits as well, and charging information to help consumers better understand how charging works. As Fourth continues to work with diverse stakeholders across the Pacific Northwest and beyond, we still face many barriers. This essentially becomes one of the greatest challenges to electric transportation adoption, and that is public awareness and education. This panel will highlight the best practices of marketing EVs of all shapes and sizes to consumers. And with that, I'm excited to present our speakers that represent different parts of the globe. So first off, we do have Karl Popham. He is the manager of electric vehicles and emerging technologies of Austin Energy. Karl Popham is the electric vehicles and emerging technologies manager at the third largest city-owned utility in the country and leads one of the most comprehensive utility EV programs in the nation. Karl has been the principal investigator on over 10 grants that include the U.S. Department of Energy funded initiatives, advancing transportation electrification, and grid modernization. Karl is co-author of Smart Cities, a book published by Springer. He was a core team member of the Mayor's Smart City Challenge team and is the electrification lead for Austin's Smart Mobility Roadmap and enables shared electric and autonomous transportation in the city. Previously, he served as Austin Energy's interim chief information officer and division manager, a managing director at Hewlett-Packard Services, director at Gap Gemini Ernst & Young, and a captain at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. After Karl, we'll hear from Peter Haugneland, Assistant Secretary General at Norwegian EV Association. Mr. Peter Haugneland is Assistant Secretary General at the Norwegian EV Association. The NGO represents around 80,000 Norwegian EV owners and cooperates with policymakers, the electric car industry, charging operators, and other organizations for the successful introduction of electric vehicles. Haugneland has a master's degree in political science from the University of Oslo. He worked with the Norwegian EV Association since 2012 and Center for International Climate and Environmental Research in Oslo before that. And last but not least, we have Dr. Shelley Francis, co-founder at EVNoire Mobility Intelligence Consulting Group. Dr. Francis, a former medical school faculty member, is an entrepreneur and transportation disruptor. Dr. Francis is the co-founder and managing partner of EVNoire Mobility Intelligence Consulting Group. EVNoire, a national award-winning organization, works at the intersection of transportation, energy, and environmental health equity. The EVNoire team specializes in providing engagement for next-generation vehicles, electric vehicles, through equity mobility models, education and outreach, expanding the charging infrastructure, facilitating vehicle marketing and launches, workplace charging, workforce development, and public policy advocacy. Dr. Francis' vision led to the co-founding of the nation's largest network of diverse EV drivers and enthusiasts, EVNoire, a 501c3 nonprofit with thousands of members across the US and abroad. EVNoire is a national multicultural organization focused on increased EV adoption and awareness in unrepresented communities. And before we get started, I'm trying to change the slide, but my monitor is, there we go. Thank you. So before we get started, I want to remind all that please submit your questions in the chat box in preparation for the Q&A. The panel and I have 3 questions prepared, and we'll field any highlighting questions in today's presentations. And also, if you're going to post on Twitter, LinkedIn, please use the hashtag #RoadmapForth, and looking forward to an engaging panel. Take it away, Karl.
Thank you, Sergio. Thank you for the introduction, and congratulations on the award. Duly deserved. Very quickly, the 3 panelists here are kind of going to go over a few things regarding customer engagement in the EV space. Very happy to be representing Austin Energy. And first, a shout out to my team that makes all the programs happen that I'll be talking about today. So one is our marketing campaign. We're talking about consumer engagement outreach. A traditional mechanism is marketing. This is version 2.0, so it's evolved. We launched the program, so I had the opportunity to co-found the electric vehicles and emerging technologies team in Austin Energy in 2011. This is the second evolution of our marketing campaign, the electric greater than gas, as well as the ultimate conversation starter. Then, as really 2.1, launched Stevie, the EV loving T-Rex, hashtag love Stevie. The thought behind Stevie is that Stevie is very social media savvy to promote viral moments while promoting the core values of transportation electrification. So here's just a few photos of Stevie in action in the community. So on the left, Stevie has a very popular suite of videos. They are in 2 different languages, English and Spanish, to relate those core values. These videos have been watched more than 500,000 times with a very high 94% watch it till completion rate. So very good stats. So here's just a core message on the simplicity of EVs. We also do messages around, plugging in, just different themes that we heard from our customers. Stevie is a featured guest at one of the largest EV shows here in the US. We had over 3,500 people here in Austin at the Charge Forth Stevie was a keynote speaker and very prominent there. Stevie being a thought leader, you can kind of see there, along with other CEOs in the electric utility space, to include our own CEO and general manager, Jackie. So Stevie getting front and center placement on that has some internal pros and cons potentially. But just really as a way to promote, electrification in kind of in a fun way. We do have the award-winning electric drive in Austin, Texas. And something new just released this summer is Electric Drive 2.0. So what we've done is we've taken the sustainable roadshow concept, and it's a celebration space in all things EV. There's a DC fast station, level 2 bike share, car share. You can see the visual there of the solar powered kiosk, marketing, the renaming of the street. So if you Google Electric Drive Austin, Texas, it will show you exactly where it is, and you can kind of go around in it. But in addition to that, so 2.0 of Electric Drive launched this summer. So we supersized the DC fast from 1 pilot to 4 stations. We also have a companion virtual reality tour of Electric Drive that just got upgraded as well. It features Stevie plugging in a car in Electric Drive, also flying into space. It's a very fun companion piece, as well as a virtual tour you can download and walk around the Sea Home Eco District, which includes the tour of Electric Drive. And just kind of a shout out on a lot of the programs I'm going to talk about today. A lot of them were inspired or made possible or partnered with people we have met at Fourth, frankly. So I'm disappointed we're not there in person. So Electric Drive, this was several years ago, where the first rendition of Electric Avenue in Portland kind of sparked the idea of how could kind of Austin do this, and I'm pretty excited about it. So another with good ideas needs friends. So, within Portland, we meet all the time with who's the new and upcoming service providers and vendors. So one thing we did win a Bloomberg grant to partnership and help drive an Austin buyer's guide for all things EV. So with this, we're working with Fourth. The technology you see there, the website, you can check it out yourself, ev.austinenergy.com, was performed by Zappy Ride. And we had another partner, Chargeway, put kiosks in the dealerships. And it's just a real campaign to drive educated buyers to the dealerships, to partner with local auto dealerships, what works, what doesn't. And one of the biggest barriers is how long it takes to sell an EV versus a gas car. 2 hours, 45 minutes versus 45 minutes roughly is the equivalency. And then there's even no better chance you're going to sell that car. And nationally, generally, the incentives are less. So one of the things we're trying to do is close that sales time gap and also have trained and dedicated salespeople at the dealership. So rather than getting the random draw of who's going to help you and try to sell you an EV at a typical dealership, you're being directed either to the internet sales manager or some other trained individual as well. And you're coming informed. You know how fueling works. You know the pricing. You know the incentives. So you're not, grinding away on that time with the at the actual showroom floor, just overall to improve, frankly, the sales and the customer experience. So EVs for everyone. We're in our 4th year. This is a concentrated effort for low to moderate income communities, historically underserved communities. So there's a lot of outreach. There's a lot of initiatives around used vehicles, electric bikes, just to better understand how we can better provide transportation electrification. It works with low-income communities on micro-charging stations for electric bikes. There's discovery projects around jobs programs, as well, to be a gig economy driver in an EV and pairing folks together. So you make it at no cost to try that out for low-income communities to see if this is for them, and bundled leasing programs that kind of help simplify that process. Also helps deal with potential credit issues as well. And once again, this was seed funded with a conversation Fourth maybe 4 years ago with the 11th Hour Project, that after they heard our program said, hey, why don't we'd like to invite you to apply for the grant. We got the grant, and even though the grant grant funding ended 2 to 3 years ago, it did institutionalize this program. We continue to carry it on an annual basis, moving forward. It's just part of our operations now. One of the projects from EVs for Everyone was our EVs for Schools program. If you are interested in launching sustainable mobility at a school in your area, we'd like to talk to you. We have put some excellent training that was done that's currently being doing online as well. For some reason, my slideshow is showing as ended. I do have a timer here as well. We have about 2.5 minutes left. And maybe staff can put up the slide for it, but if not, I'll just kind of finish with that last visual. You can just kind of look at me. So EVs for Schools, great program. And one of the things that the EVs for Everyone helps us do is by having a dedicated staff person focus on our low to moderate and historically underserved community, it just gets us thinking about, how can we do better? And so when we launched EVs for Schools, when we did the criteria, we had a lot more schools who wanted to be a pilot school. But as part of the grading criteria, so the photo over there in the launch school is a school here in Austin that over 75% of the kids there are from low-income homes. So that put them in the front of the queue to really help change generational thinking and change the talking point that EVs are toys for the rich, because we're starting to see with used cars and reliability much more opportunities moving forward. So that kind of wraps up some of my talking points. At this time, would like to pass it off to our next speaker.
Cool. Thank you. There I am. Thank you, Karl. So yeah, we're trying to get the slides back up. So thanks for navigating that appropriately, Karl. So next we have Peter. And Peter, we're trying to get the slides up. So apologies for the inconvenience. And in the meantime, do you want to go ahead and just try to save a couple minutes and introduce yourself?
Of course. So, well, thanks again for the award for the Norwegian EV Association. And like Christina mentioned, that we are a non-profit NGO representing EV owners. So we are a consumer organization, currently over 75,000 members, that they are eager EV ambassadors in Norway. And I will be talking a bit about as a background on the Norwegian EV policy, and also currently the EV market, both long-term, but also during the current COVID situation so far this year, and also some prospects and learnings from the Norwegian market. So basically, we don't have any public campaigns for EVs in Norway because EVs sells themselves. The reason why is because of the policy that makes EVs affordable, competitive in the market when you buy them. I have some graphs showing the market, but if I'm not able to put up the slides, I will try to remember the numbers. So the long-term goal of the EV policy and the parliament in Norway is that by 2025, we should reach 100% market share for zero-emission EVs. So that's just battery electric vehicles and hydrogen cars. And that's a very hard goal to reach, 100% market share in 5 years. But if we look at the historic development in the market, we have already reached 50% market share so far this year in Norway. So of all new cars sold in Norway, 50% or 51% is fully electric. Of course, we only have 5 more years to reach 100%, so it's still very hard to reach, but we think it's possible, and that's what we as an EV association works for, towards the government and also the market, the car dealers, car importers, car producers, and policymakers, both locally and national. We also have a market share for plug-in hybrids on about, I think it was 19% so far this year, and also light electric vehicles, light commercial vehicles is still lagging behind, but we think with new models and longer reach on those kind of vehicles also, we can reach this goal. And of course, don't forget electric bikes. We're also working with that. So it's electric mobility as a whole. You have to see the connections here. Still missing the slides. I just have to look into my notes here to try to, yeah. So what we see now in the current situation with the market so far, of course, the economy is not booming at the moment. So we see an overall decline in the car sales. For fossil cars, petrol and diesel, it's more than halved compared to last year at the same period. And the EVs sales are also a bit down, but not as much as the diesel and petrol cars. But again, last year in this period, we had a lot of new Tesla Model 3s coming into the market. So still, we think it will get better in the second half of this year. So we are affected, but maybe the EV sales are not as much affected as the polluting cars. So that's something to take into considerations. And what makes the EVs so competitive and so popular in Norway? It's because of the price. In Norway, we have high taxes on cars. You pay tax for CO2 emissions on the weight of the car, and also 25% VAT. And a battery electric or zero emission car is exempt from all these taxes. So actually, even if the electric car is more expensive to produce because of the batteries, it's new technology. You don't have the large scale production lines yet, so it's more expensive. But when you add all the taxes on the petrol version, then actually the battery or electric version is cheaper to buy. And in addition, of course, you have a lot of other benefits, like you can drive through toll roads. We have a lot of toll roads in Norway. They are cheaper for electric cars. You can access bus lanes in some areas. And of course, you have cheaper electricity price compared to the gasoline price. So it's very competitive, but again, it's a new technology. There's range issues and things like that. So people are not everyone is convinced just yet. And if you ask people, we have a yearly survey asking our members. I can try to get to the right slide now. Yeah, this one. So we have a yearly survey asking our members who they are, why they choose EVs, how they use it, and 72% say that economic benefits are the most important. If they have to choose, economic benefits is the most important, and 25% says that environmental considerations, both local pollution and also CO2 emissions, are their main reason choosing an EV. So we need to also reach out to the people that care about money mostly, and of course also need to have a competitive price to afford one. So that's a really important point. But when you have convinced people to try it out, they are very, very happy about it. So 94% says they are satisfied or very satisfied being an EV owner overall. And of course, if you keep the EV owners happy, then you can spread the word. And 67% of the EV owners have inspired one or more in their social circle, in their communities, to buy an EV. So they talk about it, they talk about the experience, what works, what's not working. And if you know someone that actually owns an EV, it's much easier to take that choice yourself. So I think the Norwegian EV owners and our members are the best EV ambassadors by far. But as I said, we have to make EVs affordable, but also that you can use them. Without electricity, you can't use them. So that's also with charging infrastructure. Of course, people that own their own parking space, they can install a charger and fix it themselves. But people in apartment buildings, or if they don't have dependent on street parking, then you need also public charging stations. And we see now that with the booming market, we see that there's more and more queues on fast charging stations. So that's still a barrier that we have to solve. And just for fast charging stations, next slide, please. We see that we have to build a lot more fast charging stations by 2025 to reach the governmental goals, when we're going to have more than 1 million electric cars on Norwegian roads. And that's maybe not a big number in US terms, but in Norwegian terms, it's 1/3 of all vehicles on road by 2025. And we also see that there's a lot of discussion on the environmental effect of EVs. There's a lot of discussion in media, around the dinner table, on how actually is the EV more environmental friendly than a petrol diesel, when you take into account also production of batteries, the extraction of minerals, and so on. So that's something also we have to communicate, that it's not perfect today, but we should really also get the industry to work on this, and to produce the vehicles also with renewable energy, for instance. Next. So in conclusion, the consumers are ready to try out the new technology if the price is right. And of course, with new vehicles, it's not for everyone, but also new vehicles will be second-hand, come to the second-hand market, so it will be available for more and more people. And also, if you parallel build charging infrastructure, then it will eventually be available for everyone. So that's the biggest conclusions from Norway. I leave it with that for now.
So thank you, Peter, and apologies to everyone, and Peter also including you, about the technical difficulties. I think we lost connection during the slides. So we will send these slides over to everyone for reference, given that was very good data presented on those slides. So thank you for cooperating. And again, a reminder, please submit any questions on the attendee chat. We will field those after our discussion. And please use the hashtag roadmap4th if you are utilizing social media during this presentation. So next up, we have Dr. Shelley Francis. Take it away.
Good morning, everyone. So glad to be here today and just share our perspective on what we're doing to change the narrative of what an EV driver looks like. So next slide, please. Okay, go ahead on to the next slide, to the About Us slide. Thank you. All right, so before I get started, I'd like to just share a little bit about myself and the perspective that I utilize to approach this work. So my background is, I'm approaching this from a healthcare and public health perspective. I'm a former medical school professor specializing in health disparities, as well as environmental health and maternal and child health. Also, I'm currently serving as a national board director for the Electric Auto Association. So this is just the perspective that I'm bringing to this conversation around equity and e-mobility. So I'm one of the co-founders, as you heard earlier, of EVNoire, which is the nation's largest network of diverse EV drivers and owners in the country. So we have members from around the country with chapters spanning from the West Coast to the Northeast. And what we're doing is really working collaboratively to really expand the tent and expand what an EV driver looks like, and really make sure that we're reaching the communities that are impacted worst and first by air pollution. We've compiled extensive data looking at attitudes, beliefs, knowledge, and perceptions around electric vehicles, zero emission vehicles, as well as hybrid and autonomous vehicles. And so we utilize that data to really inform our programming and our approach. Our focus areas of our work include climate justice, policy, EV adoption, workforce and economic development, as well as public health. Last September, EVNoire hosted the second largest ride and drive event in the country, which was also the most diverse in terms of the attendees, as well as the number of participants and the diversity in the number of vehicles that were presented. Next slide, please. Some of us, or some of you may also know about us from our work as principals with EVNoire. And so EVNoire is our consulting group, and we are working in two areas here, again, e-mobility best practices and e-mobility equity. In this capacity, we're working with utilities, co-ops, municipalities, as well as transit authorities and other NGOs and other entities to really help them develop business solutions to address transportation, energy, and equity needs. Next slide, please. And so just, taking a moment, let's talk about why this work is important and why it's critical. So here are some of the reasons why we're doing this work, and I've just pulled some headlines from around the country that speaks to why addressing, air pollution, transportation, and you can't talk about either of them without talking about race and ethnicity in frontline communities. So these are just some of the reasons why this work is critically important. So in many urban areas, the number one reason why children are going to their emergency room is due to asthma attacks, which are associated with overexposure to air pollution. Next slide. And then drilling down even a little bit further is, let's look at the relationship between air pollution, transportation, and COVID. And so obviously there is a well-documented or well-researched literature base that shows that communities that are overexposed to air pollution, have poor air quality, have been more likely to have a myriad of health problems. So they're have higher rates of asthma, respiratory illnesses, a variety of different cancers. And now with the pandemic, we've seen that these same communities are being disproportionately impacted by COVID. And those communities include African American, Latinx, as well as Native American communities. And some of the reasons behind this is because of social determinants of health. And so the social determinants of health framework are the factors that are associated with where you are born, where you live, where you work, you play, and you die. Some of those factors include access to healthcare, access to grocery stores with nutritious and healthy foods, also safe transportation, discrimination and bias, housing, whether it's residential segregation or housing stock and quality, but it also ties into air pollution. So your environmental circumstances impacts your health and well-being. And so these are the factors that help facilitate disparities that we're seeing today. Next slide, please. And so this next slide is really a nice overview of how air pollution is impacting all the bodily systems. So one of the things here that you're seeing is that, it's affecting or impacting from brain development to fertility, to your lungs, to inflammation, to a whole host of different problems. And so what we do know is that annually 9 million premature deaths are associated with air pollution, whether that be from pneumonia, stroke, heart disease, lung cancer, as well as a host of other disorders. So next slide. Thank you. So when we start talking about, the impact of not only air pollution, but climate change and thinking about justice and how communities of color, African American, Latinx, Native American communities are impacted, here are some of the, factors that we're seeing. They're tending to live more in communities that are overexposed to a variety of toxins, whether it's living next to transportation corridors or toxic waste facilities. So that lends to increased exposure or increased opportunity to breathe polluted air. what we're seeing now, even with COVID, is that many of these community members are also frontline and essential workers. So even more, again, increasing their exposure. Next slide. So in our attempt to try to address some of these issues and utilize innovative strategies, we're utilizing or really advocating for clean transportation, zero emissions transportation, as a way to really mitigate the impact of air pollution and poor air qualities. So one of our facets of work is really to change what the narrative of an EV driver looks like. And so these are some of our members from around the country. And so they're showing others that, particularly people who are reflective of their communities, that, hey, this technology is for you too, and there's an opportunity to engage at different levels. So whether it is participating in a K through 12 STEM project or program where we're exposing young people to careers, to technology, and to what it means to have an EV and made, to doing community events where we're having opportunities to talk to EV owners and drivers who are from their communities, and or give them an opportunity to test drive these said vehicles and show them, hey, there's opportunities to purchase a vehicle at all different price points. So whether it's a $6,000 used EV or a $50,000 electric vehicle, there's an opportunity to engage at a variety of price points and budgets. And we always emphasize the financial as well as public health benefits and the opportunity to really utilize transportation to improve your economic standing as well. So next slide. And then just here's some additional other members from around the country. Next slide. Some other programming that we facilitate includes our college strategy, which targets historically Black colleges and universities. And so many of those universities and colleges are in communities that are, again, considered these frontline communities. And so we really work to make sure that we're educating and amplifying messages around clean transportation, as well as giving the community a chance to engage, hear their voice and hear their concerns, and really engage them in a way that's culturally relevant and authentic. So this is one of our programs that we have facilitated. And this year, obviously, due to COVID, we didn't get to do as many of these programs, but that is definitely one of the programs that we consider like a flagship program. Next slide. So when we are working in this space, or having worked in this space, the best practices around equity and developing strategies for engaging communities really relies on utilizing a multimodal approach. And so I like the model that, or this is my mantra, is like nothing for us without us model. So therefore, it's important to engage communities before deciding what's best for them. And I'll say that twice. It's important to engage with communities and not decide what's best for them. And the great thing about working with communities in a situation where there's shared power and expertise is that they can tell you exactly what they need and where the gaps are. So again, that is the best practice in terms of engaging and facilitating a particular clean transportation approach. Next slide. And so in conclusion, what we're really seeking to do is engage our communities and provide opportunities for them to engage with technology, find out about economic and professional development opportunities in this space. So working to change transportation, change what transportation looks like, change who is utilizing the transportation, and working with communities around addressing their transportation needs and identify how that we can better integrate clean transportation solutions. So thank you again for your time. Let's continue to work collaboratively to educate, engage, and amplify this discussion with our communities.
Thank you, Dr. Shelley. So I think now we will move into the discussion part of our panel. So if everyone can turn their webcams on, we'll get right to it as I start to kind of group these questions together. We have a lot of questions, so thank you. Keep them coming. I think the first thing that we definitely want to highlight a theme in these questions is COVID-19. So, and we kind of had some preparation into this. So, we're living in a COVID-19 world. And so how are we engaging with diverse communities through virtual outreach? What are some other ways that you've been able to promote your work programs, such as ride and drives, et cetera? And I think we can go around the table. Whoever wants to take the lead first, please feel free.
I'll go ahead here from Austin then after that long pause. Sure, why not? One is one is the virtual outreach continues, and in some ways our team is busier than ever. The innovation, the work, the outreach hasn't slowed down at all. It just looks different. It's a lot more Zoom meetings or webinars, online webinars. And so, but the conversations and the work, and including construction of DC fast stations, all that is still running on schedule. So a few things that we look at is, one was we do have the online EV buyer's guide, ev.usenergy.com. We do have Stevie, the EV loving T-Rex, which does a lot of virtual and historically community outreach. Kids love Stevie. Our own website, pluginaustin.com, is a consolidated website of all the programs, whether it is on rebates, on pilot programs like a residential time of use we have, whether you want to provide stations for your multifamily residents or your customers or your workplace. How can we partner with you on that? So I think we've been kind of fortunate to being savvy already in the online marketplace, but we're learning more and more. And then the conversations are transitioning. But we've definitely had to change some of our outlets, but not our pace.
Okay, I will chime in here too. So because we focus on best practice and e-mobility, that's 50% of our work involves engaging with diverse communities and really meeting them where they are. And we started doing it before it kind of became the thing to do, became fashionable. So our members are actually engaging daily or weekly with people in their communities, whether it is, and in this age of social distancing, whether that is at the post office or at the grocery store. We like to say that membership has its privileges in the sense that we've created this safe space for African American Latinx members. And so we have regular convenings that really spans the ecosystem in terms of, how to talk to your neighbor or family member about EV adoption or the different types of technology that's coming out on the scene or career opportunities in that space. So again, like I think Karl stated, you learn that you have to pivot, and sometimes it's pivoting quickly to make that shift from doing more face-to-face things and going to either that high-tech approach where you're doing virtual engagement or doing some low-tech engagement, whether that is phone calls or some very small scale face-to-face engagement.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, well, in Norway, again, there has been maybe a temporary downturn here with the sales and the EV adoption. But I think it will be temporary. We have already reached like a early mass market in Norway. So I think it's so part of the everyday life now with EVs driving around all over. So I think it will get up again. And I also think that the government should use this opportunity to use, when they're going to use public funding to get the economy up and running again. They should really use the opportunity to make the switch to renewable energy, both in the transport sector and otherwise in the industries and others. And I know that the European Union is really working on this to create green jobs. That's a really good opportunity now.
Awesome, thank you. So I think this is a good segue question to your point in Norway, Peter. So one question asked here, lost my cue here. So in Norway, what is the used EV market like? Does it sell quick or slow? Are there any services, job creations, etc.? Could you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, so of course the second-hand market or used market is still small compared to the new cars market because the numbers are not there yet. But we see an increase in the numbers sold used as well. So of course it makes more and more EVs available for a cheaper price. And maybe last year's model with a range that is not top notch, but you can live with it for commuting, for instance. And our experience is also that they are really reliable. So you don't need a lot of servicing. You also save money on servicing, and it just runs and runs and runs. So I think in the long term, this is really helpful also for getting EVs accessible for everyone. Yeah, so the used car is still small, but we see an increase for every year.
Awesome, thank you. Another theme point here that I want to direct, Shelley, if you can take the lead on this, that'd be amazing. It's the theme of workforce development. So what are some examples of workforce development opportunities that you share with others through outreach?
Sure. So some opportunities of workforce development include, obviously, over the next 10 years, I've seen some recent data that has said like EVs, green jobs are going to create up to like 400,000 jobs in the space. And so those jobs can range from anything from obviously working with OEMs that are manufacturing those EVs to charging infrastructure. So, once we start putting in all this additional charging infrastructure for all these millions of EVs that are going to be on the road in the next several years, you need to have people who are poised and positioned to be able to install them, as well as to be able to maintain them. And so one of the ways that it's important to engage folks is to make sure that they have the right education, training, and they know that this transition is coming. So that's just a couple examples in terms of what economic and workforce development can look like. But just think there's a whole spectrum of jobs in that space.
Definitely, thank you. And Karl, we have one for you. So it's kind of the topic of school districts. I think EVSE in school districts is huge, and talk about education on 2 levels there. So any suggestions for choosing school districts in particular for schools that are open to EV curriculum and installing EV charging stations, or how does that look like for your program?
So how we launched EVs for schools was through the Austin Independent School District, ASD. They have a sustainability committee, and it's a group of parents and teachers thinking of curriculum around sustainability. So first find your natural partnership at a larger strategic level. Then it's so once we kind of discovered a program that would work. So the EVs for schools not only is online curriculum, and it's also a nice bonus is that it is online. So during times of remote learning, the platform uses the centralized platform. The kids can do the training online just as if the student was there. Kind of a side note in a way. So then we got a list of schools, and we just had a rating system. We looked at one is first and foremost is the principal on board and their facilities person. Do we have a champion at that school that's interested? We also look at metrics of students. We looked at percentage of representation from low-income homes. And just so from that, we launched 4. Since then, we've been expanding that. So to date, we've had over 200 teachers have gone through the training and giving it. Thousands of kids have either had the lab experience or the EcoRise online curriculum. We've had several school districts, both in Texas and throughout the U.S., have started to roll it out. We work very hard to make it public domain, because when you work with schools, you also have to have a very kind of a low cost point of entry. So we are making that public domain, that training that we initially seed funded through EcoRise to develop, but there isn't any kind of franchise fee or whatever for other school districts to kind of take it on. And just this week, we approved a translation of that curriculum in Spanish as well. A lot of the training we do, we either launch it in 2 languages, or if just one at first, then we follow up the second if it starts getting momentum like these for schools.
Awesome, thank you. So one big topic in these questions that I'm seeing is obviously charging infrastructure, specifically in multi-family shared units. So charging infrastructure presents an equity challenge, essentially. people who live in apartment buildings or multi-family units may not have the access to home charging, putting one at a disadvantage. How do you address these concerns, and are you working with any specific programs to overcome this?
So I'll take the first response to this. So obviously that is definitely one of the major barriers, and that there's no easy fix to that particular issue. I would say the best practice is obviously to have the building ordinance that for new construction, there's either the charging infrastructure is built into or integrated into the new build. Now, if you're dealing with obviously an existing building, it's much more costly. So, looking at other cost-effective manners or methods could include, say in LA, they did streetlight charging. So there's charging on the street for folks. I would say really what we're trying to do is work with communities to identify what their needs are and what would be the most appropriate solution based on what they have identified as their priorities and their needs. So, that's basically our guiding principle, but we are working on some projects that are looking at some, innovative and different ways to be able to address that particular need.
So here in Austin, 50% of our residents live in multifamily. And then you also have to look, not all multifamily is the same. There's a difference between property managed apartments and rental communities and downtown HOA condos. So what we've had to do is look at all the different kind of demographics or subgenres and have a solution. So in term is when we realized there wasn't enough rental apartments having infrastructure, we did an 80% rebate for the first 20 apartment communities that would sign up to this new program. This was several years ago. And you couldn't be in the downtown, you couldn't be in the fluent areas. We were trying to get more outside areas. So we just had a program with that. And what that did, so we got 20 and a 20, we met that metric there. But more importantly, those communities started advertising it as an amenity. So when apartments who do rentals, they compete on amenity, and it's a domino effect. So once your community has a certain amount of amenity driven, and we'd give them logos and signage and run ads, say, hey, if you have an EV plug-in here, we were literally getting calls from the apartment across the street, hey, how can I do this too? So that's one way. To address HOAs, and around HOAs, it's about the HOA not paying a penny more for one owner versus common property. We did two things. We did a kind of a legal agreement that allowed the quote unquote resale of electricity at agreed upon rate. And then more recently, a change of city code that allows, in regards to EV charging, that's not considered the resale of electricity. So that's just a technical barrier or policy barrier we had to overcome on being a city-owned public power utility. We got level 1 pilots. I think level 1 at multifamily could be very, very effective. We've in Austin, we have, and then the last thing I'll talk about is the construction phase. So we have green building codes today in Austin that we've kind of evolved where you can either get the points from infrastructure or EV readiness, and EV readiness is very important. And how it works in Austin is the Austin Energy Green Building Codes influence the building codes, and then they kind of leapfrog back and forth. So at some point, we want to get the EV readiness into the actual city of Austin building codes is kind of the goal. But right now, it is in the green building code. So that's kind of the test bed. And so we can look at seeing what works in a lot of progressive building codes.
Yeah, in Norway, well, the most effective and practical and cheapest way to charge a car is when it's parked. So slow charging during night or at your workplace or whatever on the street when you are parked. Of course, if you don't have your own parking and can install a charger yourself, you need to find another way. So at your workplace, if you can charge there, that could be a good way to do it. You work a lot of hours, so you can fill up the battery at work if you don't have charging opportunity at home. And of course, in shared apartment buildings during night, then like in Oslo, we have a support program where you get support for the infrastructure, and each owner, they pay for the charger, but they can connect to the grid easily within their apartment building. So that's one way to do it. And also Oslo City is building a lot of street charger all around the city to promote EVs, and also to, of course, add the service for people that don't have access to charging at their home. And of course, you also need some fast charging opportunities, but that's of course much more expensive to build and maintain and run. So that would be an addition to charging after you charge slowly during night or during your work days.
Thank you. So one question we have that I kind of want to make it elaborate for everybody. It's directed to Peter, and the question is, what is done by local government for people who can't afford a used EV? So I guess to make this more general and applicable, how do you guys promote, whether it's incentives or rebates or any kind of programs to make it affordable? Are there any programs that you guys work with? And how you
Well, I can start now. Well, the program is to make new cars, new EVs cheaper without VAT, without taxes. And of course, as I said, in the next round, they will become available cheaper for the second-hand market, and also installing charging infrastructure, and the running cost, maintenance cost is cheaper. So eventually it will be available for everyone. So we don't have any direct programs for this, but indirectly it will happen, of course. Yeah.
So in Austin, so Austin Energy is a City of Austin department. I am a City of employee as well as my team. So we have a lot of programs to work on affordability. So first and foremost, our public charging, which is getting close to 1,000 public charging ports at almost about 300 locations, unlimited $4.17 a month. We purposely wanted to have it simple and people can understand that pricing. So you can fill up, you can join the Plug-in Everywhere membership. Also, it's backed up by 100% renewable energy program, Green Choice. So it's West Texas Wind. Another thing, home rebates, where we love it when people charge in a regular wall outlet. That trickle charge overnight is the most economical way. We love nighttime charging, especially here in Texas, to how the ERCOT market works. We can have an overcapacity of wind in the market. So if people who want faster level 2, we have a rebate for that. If you want to take advantage of more and more bike lanes going on in your community, we have a rebate for electric bikes. Or a time of use, home time of use program, a home and away program, $30 a month, all you can charge at home, plus access to the so that's just a few off the top of my head. We have more listed on pluginaustin.com, but we're always thinking about the affordability goal and mission of the city's utility, Austin Energy, and that's definitely reflected in all our programs to make the fueling as affordable as possible and the charging as affordable as possible. For rebates to the actual cars themselves, we state incentives as well as obviously the federal incentives. We think those are larger coffers to kind of really chip away at the actual purchase price. But for fueling and construction, the things that we do, or for smaller devices like electric bikes and scooters, we do rebates for those.
Yeah. And so for us working around the country, some of the markets are much more progressive and much further advanced in this conversation than others. In a market like California, you have the opportunity to get anywhere from, say, $2,500 to $10,000 plus to utilize to purchase a new or used EV. In other markets, there's nothing available. And so in those markets, obviously, where there's limited resources, we try to work with local dealers that we may have relationships with. And if we don't have a relationship there, then we'll try to at least connect them with some resources and some advocacy organizations that can help point them in the right direction in terms of purchasing vehicles. But like I said, it's going to really depend on each community or municipality that we're speaking of.
Thank you. So we'll do one more question and then we'll move out to our outro. And I think it'll be selfish if we don't highlight the more important issues that have been presented in our world today during this webinar, especially here in the US. When we're talking about racism, more specifically institutional racism. How is your work showing up right now in attempts to not only address these issues, but also create change through our respective platforms of work?
So for us, our work has always been centered around, in terms of approaching e-mobility and transportation, it's really always centered around equity and environmental justice. Being trailblazers in the space, we're used to walking into rooms where they're very homogeneous, but at the same time, we're working to make sure that we're expanding the tent or widening the tent in terms of working in the space, as well as engaging diverse consumers. And so, as a Black woman who owns a business, I deal with these issues every day. I've done it all my life. And for me, we have an amazing platform awareness to issues of race, to transportation and equity, and provide opportunities for diverse communities, as well as general market communities to really engage and discuss some of these issues and really pivot in the way that we're approaching doing our education, our outreach, and advocacy related work. So I definitely think it's a pivotal moment and a great opportunity for us to, work better collaboratively, but also have some of those hard discussions that will lead to a more cohesive collaborative effort.
And here in Austin, the thing that resonated with me most, and it was during Dr. Shelley's conversation intro, is the engagement. The most well-intended, we're going to design this program for them. If you ever utter that, you're going to fail already. It's with and transfer the leadership to the community wanting to serve. So first, I'd start with how you hire. When I hire in my team, Emerging Tech, a lot of utilities like to hire electrical engineers and people know the electric utility. But a lot of the programs, I prefer to hire someone who brings something new to the table that I don't have in my organization. So the example for EVs for Everyone, I didn't hire a utility person. I hired someone with decades of passionate service to low-income communities and historically underserved. Her previous 12 years was the largest nonprofit in Austin, Meals on Wheels, literally bringing food to the community we want to serve with our program. So one is you got to look at, your own team and how you're hiring. And I just give it a case is, so on the City of Austin Climate Protection Plan, so I'm the co-chair of the Transportation Working Group for that. There's kind of a few practices we look at. One is just the diversity of the team being represented. Also, everyone who is part of that plan, it was required you did 1 day of equity and social justice training as just part of before we even got the ball rolling. Every recommendation goes through provided equity tool to look at unintended consequences or other potential impact. All transparent engagement. We also realize not everyone can kind of come up to meetings and whatnot. So sometimes you have to have special programs to really get that inclusion. So one thing we have is we have a stipend, a paid-based program for ambassadors who are living in the community age, so they can, do the child care and all the things so they can be engaged too. So we also have a formal program for that. So it's just not, hey, here's an open meeting and you better be online and know it. It's really proactive and a lot of listening. Especially up front, I would say, is kind of learning. And these practices have been, so these practices launched, over a year ago. The EVs for Everyone launched 3 years ago. I think it's part of the city's DNA to want to address historically served. And we have definitely some systemic issues in Austin, like probably everything. But I think the leadership is very progressive about wanting to address those issues. And we have worked out with Dr. Shelley and her colleagues before and input. They're great collaborators. I can recommend them. So there's a lot of resources you can leverage. We have an equity office at the City of Austin, et cetera. So we have natural HACA and others. So reach out to your natural stakeholders and get input. I say kind of what.
I don't have that much to add, but I think that to engage in the communities affected and ask them what they think is the most important is essential. You have to ask people what they think is important to move over to clean energy. Either it's a car or a shared car mobility or public transport that are run with zero emission. Yeah, and that's what we do with our members. We ask their opinion, get input from them to work towards the common goal.
Thank you. And I do want to add the tie of, the premise of this country, Native Americans. I know this question has been brought up a couple of times, and I apologize for not highlighting this sooner. Has there been any work regarding Native American communities?
Yes, so EV Hybrid Noir is doing some work with Native American communities in the Southeast currently. And so really we're starting that conversation with some community meetings and building relationships. So we're doing a lot more listening and not telling or anything like that, but really listening to gauge where communities are and where their priorities are in that space. We don't want to be tone deaf. There's a lot of issues going on right now. A lot of that stems from the coronavirus, and so we don't want to just go in talking about electric vehicles or zero emissions transportation when there are much higher things on that priority list, like survival, food, etc. So right now we're in this kind of formative phase of the work with our Native American partners, and hoping to build on that at some point, but again, taking it slowly and really building an authentic relationship.
Thank you. So we have 2 minutes left. I think we're on it. Thank you everyone for submitting questions. If you have any specific conversations you want to keep continuing with the panelists, please, information is provided. Email them, email us. We can tie that in. I think we do want to remind that this webinar series continues tomorrow at 9 a.m. again, hosted by Kelly Blinn, the EV Tech Strategist at National Resources Defensive Council, that's the NRDC, with the topic of cities leading the transportation electrification charge. That's from 9 a.m. till the same time, 10:15. And again, I know it's a big, weird times that we can't all be right now in Portland. The weather's going to get better tomorrow, so we were hoping to have a lot of good discussions and conversations and work here in place, but we look forward to connecting physically sometime in the near future. So with that being said, we want to say thank you for everyone for tuning in. Thank you for the panelists for giving your time, energy, effort, and dedication to this hard work that we're all trying to push forward and fighting for good. So be well, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, take care.